Welcome to another Acts Church podcast. Glad you're with us today. Hope you're having a good day. My name is Hunter Crofts. I'm on staff here at Acts Church, and I've got just David Robinson with me today. That's Pastor David Robinson. Yeah, there's just too many David Robinsons.
There are a lot of David Robinsons around, not all related to one another, but the Lord has a sense of humor, of course, and so there's David Robinsons everywhere, and then all kinds of other Robinsons that are, again, not all related to one another. They just happen to have the same last name. So, and I don't know that there's like a particularly large number of Robinsons in this area, but they all found Acts Church. So,
if you're a Robinson, come find.
Yeah, if you're a Robinson, you're going to fit in really well, and they'll assume you're related to all the other Robinsons, which then you get to tell them you're not. It's really fun.
Right.
So, today we're going to talk about iPhones, Android phones, tablets, computers, and screens in general. One of the big issues of today is, what is the effect of the phenomenon?
I just messed up that word.
Hunter was trying to say phenomenon earlier, and it came out funny, so I thought I would just, do that as well. What is it with this phenomenon of screens, and how is it affecting people in general? How's it affecting young people specifically who have grown up in front of a screen their whole life? Although it does not seem to have made a difference at this point what age somebody is. If you go almost anywhere at almost any time, you will see people looking down at their screens. You can go, if you're a people watcher, which some people are, and you go to a restaurant or you go somewhere and you see a family sitting there, a couple of teenage kids and mom and dad, and they're all looking at their screens, right? Mm-hmm. They're not necessarily talking to each other. They're, staring deep into each other's iPhones.
Hang on, my phone went off.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like the alerts, the constant being connected. Is this something that causes anxiety? Is it something that's helpful? Like anything, like the internet or anything else, there's always going to be good and there's going to be some bad about that. And so we want to talk about that. We want to talk about how screens are affecting our lives, how the believer should be using this technology, what's valuable about it, what's not. I personally carry an iPhone. Hunter carries an iPhone as well. Some of you, unfortunately, carry an Android device, and so we have to look at your green bubbles when we text. If you're not familiar with that, it's because you don't have an iPhone. For people with an iPhone, when they text other people with an iPhone, the text bubble is blue. It's very pleasing to the eye. And I like the color green, but I don't like the color green in text bubbles. And so this is my own personal rant. But if you have an Android device or other device and you text an iPhone, you're green. Your bubble's green. Or my bubble is green when I text you back. However it works, that's very annoying. So if you're an Android person, I'll just ask that you get an iPhone. No,
you probably don't talk to them anyway.
Right. So no, we have devices. Almost everybody has a device. When we go to, and Hunter went with us to to Honduras this last time.
I do not remember the Philippines.
This is my understanding. This is true in the Philippines as well. Even in countries that are very, very poor, financially, everybody has a cell phone and often a smartphone.
I was in Cambodia and we were walking through like the Angkor Wat temples. And there's like this crew of ladies out there using like a machete to cut the grass in the yard. And then they, one of them is off sitting on the ledge taking a break on her phone, on her iPhone. They've got machetes. They don't have a lawnmower.
Swing a machete, check a text. Swing a machete, check a text.
Yeah.
That would be hard to say 10 times fast. Swing a machete, check a text. Anyway, that's a phenomenon. But yeah, so people are out there. The people are out there wherever they are, however impoverished an area is, whatever, they're still connected to these screens, to their cell phones, to the internet. I mean, the world is now connected in that kind of a way, and it seems to take up a enormous amount of our time and attention. So I'm going to ask you, Hunter, first. I'm going to start with kind of the young people, someone like Hunter who has grown up with basically smartphones. Have been, the iPhone came out in 2007, and you were born in
94, so I was
13 years old.
Yeah.
So you were right at the age to probably have a cell phone, right about the time that smartphones came into prominence. I don't know if you had one at that time.
I got on my 13th birthday, I got my first cell phone.
And it was a smartphone?
No, it was not. I didn't get a smartphone until I went to college, actually.
Okay, so you had just a flip phone type thing prior
Slide.
to that.
Yeah.
Oh, Slide. That's fancy.
I had the Rumor 2 or something like that.
Okay. I don't know what that is, but I had a Razor. Or no, I didn't have a Razor. Those were too fancy. I had like someone else's version of it that was not quite as nice, but looked really similar to the Razor phone.
Right.
I know this is all very fascinating, but you had flip phones, and some of the flip phones were cooler than other flip phones, but they were all just flip phones, right? And then I got my first smartphone in 2007. I was an attorney. As a matter of fact, I had just sort of started practicing law. I had just started practicing law. And I bought a Windows-based phone, which I don't know if they have those anymore. But at the time they did, and it had a little stylus with it and whatever, but it was a touch screen, like an iPhone, and the iPhone came out that year as well. It was very fancy and popular. I didn't have that one, but I've had a smartphone, first Android for quite a few years, and then iPhones since that time. So we're talking 11 years. Have been using smartphones with, the kind of capabilities that we now have. And other people are more recent to it. Some people still don't have a smartphone. Some people still carry a flip phone, and that's good for them because this phenomenon maybe isn't affecting them in the same way. But there's also the iPads, right, or the tablets. Computers have been, people have been using computers for a long time. And so what you have is this opportunity or this endless amount of content. Whether that's articles that you want to read or videos that you want to watch or pretty much, any music you want to listen to. When I was a kid, you want to listen to music, you go to the store, you're either buying a record or you're buying a cassette tape. A little bit before that, a little before my time, 8-track tapes. And that's how you listen. And of course, I remember when they started coming out with technology where it could read where the song on a cassette ended and the next song began, so you could actually push like a fast forward. And it would zzz,
until there was like a spot of silence.
Until there was a spot of silence, and it could tell, and then it would play the next song, which is super fancy. I don't think I ever had that technology, but some car stereos eventually had that and whatever. But normally, you're listening to a tape, you're going to pretty much listen to all the songs because you're fast forwarding, rewinding. Of course, you're turning it over, because it's got two sides to it, or a record that you turn over, it's got two sides to it. And you owned whatever music you owned, or you would listen to, borrowed a tape from your friends, or, some people would copy tapes and things like that. It's very illegal. As we all know, piracy is not a victimless crime. But you would have, they actually at one point had some stores. This is somewhat interesting for the legal scholars out there, but there were some stores that started having, they would have, if you remember, for those of you who have been alive longer than Hunter, you would normally have like a boom box or a tape deck in your stereo. We used to, Hunter, back in the day, almost everybody's house had a stereo system. And so there would be like two big speakers. I'm talking, 4 feet high,
right,
with like a 10 or a 12-inch woofer and the tweeters and whatever. And then you would have a turntable, and you would have a tape deck, usually with 2 tapes. You would have your amplifier / stereo radio, right? And then maybe if you were fancy, you'd have like an EQ system with it that'll be plugged in.
Wow.
It was in like a I don't know how to explain it. Like a case,
almost like an entertainment.
Yeah, like an entertainment case thing. And like I remember ours would have like a glass front on it, and you with the magnet where like you push it to open and you push it to close. So that's back in the 80s and 90s.
We had that but like CD version. I remember,
and eventually you had a CD player,
but it was probably like the size of our copier that we have in there. Like 2 feet tall and a foot wide. Yep,
they were big, and you get a CD player. First it was individual, and then you could get CD players, and then you get ones that had like a turntable CD thing.
It had
like 100. Oh, they had ones like 100 spots in it. And so you could just load like all your CDs into it. And of course, how you remember which CD was number 78, I don't know, but that was cool.
I wish I had something that fancy.
And then so you'd listen to music in that way, right? And prior to that, it was, back in the day, just a turntable or just a radio, or maybe you had an 8-track player, whatever. That's the way music was listened to. I say all that because now I can go onto a phone, a device, whether it's a phone or whether it's a tablet or whatever, and whether you're using Spotify or Apple Music or one of the other products, Pandora,
right,
whatever. If I want to listen to a song, I can say to my phone, I'm not going to say, "Hey Siri," because my phone will turn on and be like, "What do you want?" It did. It's totally turned on. What do you want? Now it said a cuss word. I don't know what that's about.
It just knows.
Right.
It just knows what you're talking about.
Exactly. So Siri would tell me. I could tell it, I want to listen to whatever, right? I want to listen to Sandy Patty singing Via Dolorosa, which is, of course, as you all know, what I listen to all day long. And it would just play it. It's just be like, sure, playing that song.
If it weren't copyright problems.
There it goes, and it'll start playing that song, and that is unthinkable. Like you save money up. You go to the record store and you buy music. Right? It was a whole thing. You search out music. They used to have like listening rooms, and what I was going to say is, I got lost. There used to be like record stores, and you could go into the back, and you could pay them like $2 or $3, and buy from them a tape, right? The kind of tape you can record, and then you can borrow, quote unquote. You can rent from them whatever tape. So I want Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, this album, and so you rent from them that tape. You go into the back room, you put that tape into one cassette, and then you put your recording tape into the other cassette, and you could record the tape onto the other one. So then you had a recorded tape of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers album. Of course, that got shut down. That practice got shut down because, of course, it's illegal. But for a while, that was going on. That was like a normal thing that went on. And because that's how we had to get music back in the day. And so that's just one example of instant access. The other thing is TV or movies, right? Back when in the early 80s and prior to that, prior to VCRs becoming a big thing, a movie comes out in the theater and you either see it or you never saw it. That's it.
Man.
The new Avengers movie comes out and it's like, have you seen the new Avengers movie? Like, oh, I missed it. Like, oh, well, you'll never see it now.
Man.
And maybe if it comes on TV, if it's popular enough to come up on TV at some point, of course, cut down in 4:3, so it's probably not going to come on TV in its proper letterbox form and stuff. If you care about that type of thing, which I do, and you're going to get, and of course it's going to be
commercials
for
every 10
time,
minutes.
and just commercials all the time, or whatever. That's all you got to see. Now, what we eventually got was these VCRs where you could record it. And if you paused during the commercials, then the final recording that you had would have been the movie without all that stuff. Still looked terrible.
Probably still legal, right?
We'll talk about that in a second, just because it's interesting, and I know we're kind of off the screens things, but this is kind of interesting. So, but if you didn't see the movie, you didn't see the movie. Some movies would come out on a schedule, like Disney cartoons. I remember seeing Snow White when I was a little kid, and of course that came out in 1940 whatever. But it would come back to the theater every 7 years or whatever it was, so that you could see it, because there was no other way to see these movies unless they happen to be on TV or whatever. Okay, so then VCRs came around in the 80s, and it was like, wow, we can go to the store and we can rent these movies. Certainly you remember Blockbuster and whatever. You were probably still relatively young when that whole thing went away, but not that young. I mean, that's only been a few years that we basically don't have.
I don't remember really going to Blockbuster much after probably 13, though.
Okay. Yeah, that was like what you did. Like on the weekend, on Friday night or whatever, you're going
grab
to
a pizza and you
go to Blockbuster, and they sold candy and popcorn there and stuff, and you're going to rent your videos, and you're going to and you're hoping they had it. Right. Because it could be all rented out.
Because there's only so many copies.
The new releases were X amount, and then the older ones were, you go to the store, 99 cents for the video, and you get it for 2 days, whatever. Make sure you rewind it when you bring it back. I mean, and then it was all
that's a Panda
DVDs
now.
that came out. Right. It's what?
It's a Panda Express now in Spokane.
Oh, it's Panda Express, yeah.
Right across the street from my high
there's
school.
a Blockbuster, shut down Blockbuster over by where my house is. And so that's how we did it, right? Now, as to the VCR thing, you asked about whether that was legal. So what happened was Betamax was a Sony product. It was the first one to come out. It was not a VCR. It was the same exact process. It was a tape, and you could record and whatever. But it was basically Betamax was fighting with traditional VCR to see which format was going to become the one that was popular. And of course, Sony Betamax lost. That's why you don't see a lot of people with Betamax players.
Right.
And VCR became the one. When DVD sales when they started doing high definition DVDs, Blu-rays, there was also a company called HD DVD. Sony is the Blu-ray company. HD DVD was the non-Sony company, and they fought for prominence of the Blu-ray market, and Sony won that time. So that's interesting. But Betamax was sued. Okay, so the studios and whoever sued Betamax and basically said, this product is basically being used to steal, television, because people are recording the movies and recording the content off the television. So that they went to the Supreme Court and said, is this a violation? Is this a violation of copyright for Betamax and VCR in this case to be giving people a device that's in their house that can connect to their TV that can steal, quote unquote, these television shows, these movies, and whatever. And what the Supreme Court said is that time shifting, which means recording the thing so you can watch it later. Okay, so I've got church on Wednesday night, and my favorite show comes on Wednesday night. So I set my VCR to record that show so that when I get back from church, I can watch it. People would do this with football games and whatever. That they said that is a non-infringing use. In other words, you're allowed to do that. Right. Time shifting is okay, and because the product itself can be used for a non-infringing use, for a proper use, even though it also can be used for non-proper use. For instance, recording a movie that you're sitting there watching,
and watching it back later,
and then putting it in your library,
right,
is illegal.
Right.
Yeah, it's against the law. It's stealing. I know that probably most people did that, and they'd have all these movies they recorded off of TV or whatever. Right. And certainly going and renting a movie and then using a second VCR to record that movie, definitely illegal.
Right.
But non-infringing would have been time shifting, which is why you now have DVRs. Same concept, right? Yeah. The reason you're allowed to have a DVR is they're supposed to be used for time shifting. Now, some people will DVR a movie or whatever and then keep it on their DVR forever to watch over and over again. That is not time shifting, and technically that's illegal.
Don't they have like an expiration?
It depends on the DVR. Okay. But the old when TiVo first came out and whatever, they didn't. You could just leave it on there forever.
That was Wild West.
So, yeah. But the point is, because you could use it for a non-infringing purpose, it was illegal. It was a legal, not illegal technology. Okay. All of this is just kind of a history of where we've gone from very difficult access to entertainment. So you had to actually find things to do other than sit in front of a screen all day, because there was only so much you could do in front of a screen all day. There were 3 channels, eventually 4 and then more that you could get over the air. So, obviously there was cable and whatever, but there wasn't a lot of great content. It wasn't super accessible. Eventually video games came out, the Commodore 64, the Atari, and the Nintendo, and we moved forward in that. But there was only so much you could do inside your house. So if you were a young person, you got on your bike, you went outside, you got your baseball glove, you rode to the park, you played with your friends, you did that kind of stuff. We didn't know as much back then about the bad people that do bad things to kids. And so it was pretty much a free-for-all. You get on your bike, you take off, especially like summer vacation. You take off in the morning. It's like, Mom, I'll be home, be home by dinner or whatever.
Right.
And you come home for dinner, you eat dinner, and you go right back out. And it's like, when the street lights come on, come home, that type of thing. It's just, you just go and you do your thing. I mean, they knew roughly where you were. Like you were probably in the city somewhere.
Right.
Beyond that, your parents didn't know what you were doing, didn't care. They were doing their own thing. And you, because there was no screen for me to sit on and just be on all day. Okay.
Right.
Obviously Nintendo and stuff changed it a little bit, but really not that much. Now let's bring it to you and the group of people who is your age. You guys have had access to music and to video, because now obviously the same thing with music is with video. If I want to watch a movie, I just go look for it on iTunes or Amazon or I guess Google Play Store or whatever Android people use. I don't know. I think that's what they use. And you can go and you can just download the movie and watch it right there on your phone or your tablet or whatever. You want music, you want this song, it's right there instantly. You want information. Back in the old day, if you and I were talking now, it's like, I think that Mount Hood is 11,260 feet. And you're like, I think it's 13,410 feet. We'd just be like, well, I bet you. And if we bet, guess where we had to go? Since we didn't have a tape measure that long to go to Mount Hood and do it, we went to the library. You had to go to find a book with writing on it. I don't know if you're familiar with those. There's actually books made out of paper.
Right.
And you would go find that information. Now, if I want to know, I just look it up, which it looks like you're doing right now. It's
11,237 feet.
So I was closer to being right than you were.
It's a stratovolcano in the Cascade Volcanic Arc of northern Oregon.
There you go. information at your fingertips, right? So that's been your life. You want to know something. When I wanted to know something, it was encyclopedias, it was that kind of thing. When you want to know something, you say to Siri, I want to know this thing, and it tells you. So what is that?
I'll ask Siri what time it is.
Right.
Because I don't want to touch my phone to unlock it to be able to see what time it is. Right.
That's lazy. That you have a problem.
Usually it's like in my pocket or something.
Right. Still, you have a problem.
Nice,
you can't pull it out of your pocket.
Maybe I have gloves on.
So what is it like for you, and not to grow up like that? I think everyone can imagine what it's like. In other words, I understand that that's had an effect. And I think we've had other podcasts where we've talked about millennials and that type of thing. So I don't want to go over that ground again. What I would say is, what is it like for you to think about the amount of screen use that you're using as a believer, applying the mind of Christ to the amount of screen usage that you have? Is it something that you feel like you ought to change? Is it something that you feel, and not just you, the people you're around, your friends, your family, whatever, is it something you feel like our faces, our eyeballs, and ears and sensory organs are in these screens too much? I think everyone would agree we're on our screens too much. So what is that like for you? How are you walking through that in your life right now?
It can be a problem in lots of different ways. In social settings, maybe I use my screen to distract from slightly more uncomfortable, as uncomfortable as it is to sit in a social setting and just look at your phone. It's slightly more uncomfortable maybe to try and engage in conversation with people that you don't know yet, who you're supposed to be getting to know. Or maybe something I kick myself for so often is I lay in bed and I watch just random YouTube videos or scroll through Facebook or Instagram for like an hour, and I didn't see anything that I wanted to see really, but I just do it because it's just this always populating thing of entertainment sort of for me to see. And I'll go to bed at 11 and all of a sudden it'll be 12:30 and I'll have been so happy that I went to bed at 11 o'clock so I can get a good night's sleep, and pretty soon that went away because I was stuck on my phone. So things like that are things that I definitely see as reasons this is a dangerous thing for how I live my life. Mm-hmm. And I think just in general, I think we have just a hard time relating with people because we don't have to. Mm-hmm. There's so much that we can do beyond interacting with people, which I think is a threat to the ministry of the gospel. Really, I mean, from the Christian viewpoint, I think it's a threat to the ministry of the gospel. It can also be a way to advance the gospel, but I think it also poses those problems. Right.
There's a big difference between, like, you can go online and listen to, we put our sermons out. Lots of churches put sermons out. Great teaching, great Bible teaching. You can get it at the touch of a button very, very easily. You can listen to a lot of really strong men and women who are walking through different passages of Scripture and what they mean and whatever. But if that's all you do, and that and YouTube and whatever, and there's very little connection with actual human beings, then there's nowhere to execute all the things that you're learning and put them into practice. Like, you can become head smart and heart broken, right? Because you're not actually connecting with other people. This is, you have just think about the epidemic of pornography use, where men and women are increasingly becoming addicted to pornography. And you have men now that would say, I would rather, get on my phone or my computer or whatever and view pornography than take a real woman out on a date.
Right.
That's insane. Okay. But it speaks to something that says, this is the way this is actually what I'm comfortable with. Mm-hmm. I'm used to connecting with a device where I'm in control.
I can have my own world that's closed in.
Right.
And it's just the only influencer. Not the only influencer, but the only one making decisions is me.
I decide what I want. It's a power and control issue, right? It's a spiritual problem. Obviously, pornography use is a spiritual problem, but I don't think people connect that also to the fact that just over usage of screens in general can be a spiritual problem. Right. When you are in the need to be in control of what's going on and controlling your world in that way, to that extent. See, the thing about people is they're messy. Mm-hmm. and you got to deal with stuff,
and you can't control it,
and you can't control what other people are doing. You got to come in, you got to take it for what it is. You got to sacrifice. You got to submit to other people and the situation that you're in, and it's not all about you. It's got to be about them some too, or there's not much of a relationship, and it's complicated, and you could be rejected. See, the phone's not going to reject you, right? Or at least that's what you think, except for the fact that people feel more depressed, more anxious, more upset, the more they use their phone, the more you can look through Facebook, and look, I'm as guilty as anybody on this. I've been thinking about this issue more lately, like, what do I need to do to control my screen time? Because I can do the same thing. I mean, sit there and just start watching YouTube videos on, golf. I mean, literally, I'll watch YouTube videos that are reviewing golf clubs that I'm never going to buy. I don't even play golf very often, right? And when I do, it's not good. I don't buying the $1,200 set of irons is not going to improve my golf game, and I'm not going to do it anyway. And yet I'll literally sit here and listen to some English guy telling me about these clubs and whatever that I know I'm not buying. Or the review on the latest product, or just dumb stuff, or some cat that's like funny, or whatever it is. Like, I could sit there, you can get lost, and there's so much content, and yet at the same time, there's not that much great content because you can run out of it so fast. And, there's only so many things that I'll watch. If you allow yourself to watch anything, I suppose you can be pretty busy, but it's only so much stuff I'm willing to watch on Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever, because there's so much trash. And I just literally mean that in its actual, meaning. It's trash. It's worthless. It has no value. It's not artistic. It's not.
Which is why it's on Netflix.
Which is why it's on Netflix. It's not pushing the world forward. It's not helping me understand anything. It's not growing me. So there's so much trash. But a lot of YouTube is just what I'd call brain bubblegum too. It's just, there's nothing to it, right? You're just wasting time tickling your brain. And again, you're in control. You are the one who's deciding what you watch. You're the one. And so when you walk into a room, and I have the same thing, you walk into a room and there's discomfort. The easiest thing to do is pull that phone out and get your eyes down on that phone. And then you don't have to, what have you done there? Instead of being in the situation and not being in control, and like somebody might come and talk to me, or I might need to go talk to somebody else or whatever, you've taken control of the situation by looking down your phone. Now, no one's going to come and bother you because you're busy, right? And so you've taken control. Now, if you want to talk to somebody, you can put your eyes up and talk to them, but they can't really come in and talk to you because it's rude, because you're obviously whatever you're doing on your phone, right? Which may be nothing but literally looking at the screen or flipping through and reading an old email. I don't know what we're doing in those moments, but what we are doing is we're taking a certain level of control, social control,
back into our own hands, instead of having to deal with the ins and outs, the good and the bad, the things that happen in social life. And as a result, we have, certainly in your generation, but I think we're growing this way with many, many people, is we're becoming less and less socially adept. Less and less able to deal with each other, more and more moving into a place where people don't feel comfortable or confident talking to other people, connecting with other people. It used to be you went out and hung out with your friends pretty regularly. I think as time goes on, it's less and less that way, because you can sit at home and watch Netflix or whatever and not have to connect with anybody, and you're not horrifically bored, which is what it would have been back in the day. It's like, okay, there's like 2 shows that I watch each week, and once those are over, I'm either knitting or reading a book, or I'm connecting with other people, and no one likes to be bored. And so you're hanging out with your friend. Invite these people over for dinner on this day. I mean, it's just not happening like it used to. And of course, I sit here and I look at the church, and I think, why are some of the problems happening with the church? Well, because the church by nature works when people are connected, when people are pouring into one another. And most people like life group, and that's one night a week and whatever. But think about how much more strong and powerful the church would be if, 2 or 3 nights during the week, you were connecting with another couple, another family, whatever, building relationships. You build no relationship with a screen. Right. No relation. You build no social skills, no relationship, no anything. Now, I'm mostly concerned on the negative side. We'll talk about the positive side in a little bit. But you don't do that. If we were to take
2 hours, right? The average person, I don't know what it is. I don't have the stats in front of me about how many hours a day you look at your screen, but I'll tell you this, it's probably double what you think you're doing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have an app now.
Right.
It tells us.
The phone tells you how many hours a day you're doing. And it will tell me each week now, it tells me you used a half hour less per day than you did the week before or whatever.
It looks like in the last week, it says 3 hours and 54 minutes per day for me.
Yeah.
Which part of that is I had Netflix just sitting on for 5 hours on Saturday while I was working. So
yeah, I have like, I'll listen to a book or whatever while I'm doing different stuff. And I don't know what they count as screen time, but mine's similar, like 4 hours and something a day.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, seriously?
And you might not actually have your attention on your screen that entire time, but it's close to that. It's not too far off.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy. And there's probably people who do less and there's probably people who do more. But one way or the other, I'm using this device a lot. Now, if I was to cut that in half and specifically take that time to either be reading scripture or to be connecting with other people, like forcing myself to be connected with other, and I don't know, like I'm on the phone a lot too. I don't know if it counts that.
Oh yeah, phone calls.
I use the phone to talk to people. So, which you can actually use these for that too. I don't know if you knew that. They actually are phones as well, which most people
like
are.
it's like a text message but voice, like actual voice that you can
as
hear.
Opposed to writing it down, you can actually talk to another person. Yeah, and not even just on video with your FaceTime or whatever, which I don't really get. FaceTime is not something that I would use unless there was some reason to be seen that something that I'm like, hey,
like you're troubleshooting like a TV not working.
Exactly. Or I want to, or hey, I'm in this place and I want to show you what it looks like. And so I FaceTime you and I turn the camera around and I show you what's going on. Other than that, the whole FaceTime thing is not a technology that I'm that interested in, but that doesn't matter. Or Skype or whatever you use on your device. Let's talk about the good side for a second, because I feel like we've been dogging on it. I think that it's not exactly controversial to say we should all be using less time. It's not exactly controversial to say our ability to connect with other humans has been greatly diminished, or seems to have been greatly diminished by the cell phone. And it's not particularly controversial to say that has probably had a major effect on the church, which is at its basis an organism that is relationship based, relationship with God, relationship with people. And so if screens are taking away from relationship, they are by their nature taking away from the power of Christ's church.
Right.
Or I mean, nothing can take away from the power of the Holy Spirit in Christ's church, but you understand what I'm saying. The ability of us to grow and become organically stronger and more one with one another. Now let's talk about the positive side. I'll let you go first, and then I'll tell you kind of what I think is positive about screens. But I'll let you tell me, what have you found to be uplifting, the kinds of things that push you forward, the kinds of things that help you grow in the mind of Christ through your phone, computer, tablet. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, like text messaging is a super convenient way to communicate. I do a lot of things with teams working at a church, whether it's working among the other staff. It's really easy to just send a quick text message to somebody on staff, especially if they have an iPhone and it comes up as a blue message because those are faster. I can send a quick message to say Susan, say, hey, this isn't working right. And she can really quickly get back to me, and we don't have to be there physically to do that. That's like an obvious solution that it provides. And it's also a way that I can develop friendships with people that aren't local to me or don't have time to meet up with me. I can text message them and we can have a relationship that way. It's limited. It has its restrictions, but there is some connection that is happening there. Also things like having, I can have whatever worship music I want pulled up on my iPhone, like you mentioned earlier about music. Because of things like Spotify or Apple Music or whatever you use. I can share stories as the worship and media. I do a lot of media stuff here at Acts Church, and it's a way that I can share stories that bring Christ to light through screens, through whether it's a projection on the screen on Sunday or whether it's a quick clip on Instagram that the church is posting. That's a way that I can take the message of the gospel and get it in front of people in a way that I couldn't have done it without screens. So those are a few of the obvious ones that I see.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, like, I do my daily Bible reading on a screen. I use a Bible app, and it gives me my, for reading through the whole staff we have for reading through the Bible in a year. I think you're a little behind, but we won't talk about that in public. But no, we have the whole staff reading through the Bible in a year on this particular app, and it's really nice. And I can highlight, and I can even make notes, and I can do whatever in that app, and that's great. So reading scripture, and one of the things I do is I tell myself I'm not going to use these other parts of my phone until I've gotten my daily Bible reading done. So I'm not going to sit there and watch a YouTube video. I'm not going to do whatever until I've got that done. So sometimes that's actually good. It helps me to go through that process. I listen to books. I use a device for that. And so, and listening to books is great because I can't read. I'm not supposed to read while I'm driving.
It doesn't go so well.
No, it's not. It's the police don't like it.
I was thinking about like some sort of projection system where it projects it on your windshield, so you're still looking ahead, but you're reading.
Yeah, I would crash.
Should not work.
No, that would not work. I had a buddy who would tell me that he would play his guitar while he drove, which is, yeah. He's a pretty good guitarist. Probably not a great driver. Anyway, it's. But
when they get the smart cars going,
yeah. Once we have the self-driving thing going,
then they can project it on my windshield.
They can do it. I'll just probably sleep at that point. But I listen to books, so I'm getting information that way. I do all kinds of research for. I don't have to own in my office, like my dad, who's been a pastor for 40 years or whatever, 1,000 books, right? Mm-hmm. I can have those 1,000 books on my phone. Mm-hmm. I have access to so much information when I'm studying the Word. It's amazing.
It's searchable.
Yeah, it's all searchable. I can find this. I can sit there and look up the Greek word for this or whatever and research through it, and I can get it instantly. I don't have to go somewhere. I don't have to go to a library. I don't have to go find the book. It's all right there for me. So it's made research on as a pastor and as an attorney, getting all these cases. I mean, you used to just have to go. One of the things we had to learn in law school was how to use the law library, and the technology for internet searching was there when I was in law school, but they still wanted us to know how to use paper, right? Mm-hmm. And using paper means you got to go to a book. So this is the kind of case I want. Here's what I know about it. Here's what it was a process. It's a whole thing, and that whole process is now down to click, 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 and it can pull up. So I'm saving clients money because you've charged people for all the research you're doing. I'm saving my clients money when I'm practicing law. I'm able to do more as a pastor, as a preacher, a teaching pastor, because I can get the information I need much, much quicker. So it's an amazing, using my devices, whether it's my computer or my phone or my tablet, is an amazing way to do research, to read scripture, to listen to sermons, to listen to books, to listen to, and beyond the entertainment side, there's a lot of stuff that's available to help me grow. And so I find that if used properly, the tool can be a great tool, right? The question is, how often do we use it properly? And from what I've seen, my experience is probably not as much as we should. We're probably not properly using our devices, which is to say, spending a reasonable amount of time as we should. Text messaging, I will agree with you, is probably one of the greatest advances that's ever. When it first came out, I was like, why would you just call the person? Mm-hmm. Now I realize if I had to call and have a conversation, which of course a conversation goes like this, right? Hey, how's it going, man? How are you doing? Oh, I'm doing well, whatever. Hey, I wanted to ask you about blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I'm thinking blah, 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 blah. Okay.
Hey, did you hear about?
Yeah. And because this is a person, this is a friend, you love them. You're not going to just be like, I need to say this thing. Can you just tell me the answer to that thing and we'll talk later? That's harder to do on the phone.
Or I need to tell you something, and I don't necessarily want to interrupt whatever you're doing right now to tell you it. I just want that information to be there for you. You can check
this later. Or I need to know this pretty much instantly, and you could never get on the phone with me, but you could quickly, like while we've been doing this, I've texted Susan. She's texted me. I've texted her back on the church business issue while we're sitting here talking, and I can keep track of what we're doing and do that because it's just a quick message, right? But if she needed something, we'd have to stop this. I have to pick up the phone, or I got to do it later, but what if she needs it right now? Or my wife texts me like, hey, I need this for, or my kids text me. Texting has been great. if it's not overused. Now, some people have lost the art of conversation because everything is text.
Right.
And if you're texting more than 10 or 15 texts in a row, you should probably just call. Right. Or you probably should have called in the first place, right? But a quick, hey, where's the, I was, my wife was thinking, I'm looking for the whatever, where did you put it? We don't need to have a whole conversation on the phone about that. Oh, it's in the top drawer.
Yeah.
Boom, done. She can move on. I'm moving on. Everyone's good. Texting is great. Love it. If it's used properly.
Right.
If you use it nonstop and have stopped learning how to speak, or you constantly are making horrific grammar and spelling errors. Please. Yeah, and I make them too. There's autocorrect. There's stuff that happens. There's weird things. Sometimes it's funny. But I usually, not every time, but I usually proofread a text before I send it. I proofread emails before I send them. Different issue. We can talk about the importance of proofreading your written communication at a different time. But let me just say, I think it's important to do so. But yes, text messages have been great. The ability to get music on demand is great. I think that it's harder for people to discover probably the other good music that a band puts out other than what's really popular, because you can just search for that one song and listen to just that one song, as opposed to what we used to do, was listen to a whole album, and there was music that may not be as poppy, something that has this incredible hook right off the bat, but is great music, but you're probably not going to find it. You're probably not going to, that's probably not what's going to be popular. So there's going to be 3 or 4 songs or 1 or 2 songs from this album that somebody puts out that you actually listen to, and the rest of the music just, I don't even know. Do people still put out like full albums? Is that how it works? I don't even know.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I actually do make a point to listen to like full albums. I also have with Spotify, like it'll just bring me random playlists that I listen to that I don't even know who any of the artists are, and I just listen to it just to hear what's out there.
Yeah. So anyway, the bottom line is, how much time are we giving to these screens, and what is the result? What is happening as a result of the amount of time we are giving to these screens? I've got a couple kids that are 18 and 15. Ethan will be 16 next month, and I do wonder for them and their friends, like, are they? We talked about kind of the social stunting that might be happening, but I wonder what other issues are there. I've heard they're now calling their generation Generation Z. I don't know if you've heard that, which
makes sense.
Kind of like your generation was Generation Y until we came up with millennials. Now they're calling them Generation Z until they come up with whatever they're going to call them. And they're saying that they're just less in general. There was a study that came out recently, kind of less social, more concerned with like making money and stability, less concerned with, I would just call it like kind of the traditional relationship type stuff. Like, when I was young, everybody was like, I want a boyfriend, girlfriend, this guy. They're like waiting much longer to get into these types of relationships and things like that. And
that's sort of healthy.
I think that it is healthy. I think that the result is healthy. I wonder if the cause is healthy.
Yeah. Right.
And so I was talking to my brother, his son's like 12 years old. And we were talking about, his son is not, hey, you want to go to your friend's house? Like, no, he's got his Xbox. I got my PlayStation. We can, or, whatever.
You can't play if he has an Xbox.
Okay, sorry. However it works. I do. I actually do know that. He's got his PlayStation. I got my PlayStation. We put the headset on. We can talk and play at our own houses. Why would we go over to each other's houses, right? And like when I was a kid, it was spending the night at other people's houses, going out with your friends all the time or whatever. So they're not doing that, partially because whether it's phones or video games or whatever, these screens are keeping them from doing that. And so now we see this result of they're less relational, they're less likely to be engaged in romantic relationships, or even I would say normal relationships. And so the question is, what does that mean for those of us who aren't in Generation Z but are behaving just like they are? We talked about what that might do for the church and whatever, but what do you see, Hunter, for yourself and for those who are close to you? And, you live in a house with, how many people live in that house?
It depends. Right now, like,
what is it, a hostel?
No, it just kind of depends. Like, my wife's grandma, she lives there some of the time. since her husband passed, because she's just sometimes more comfortable
Is
around
she a
people.
lot? Is she on the screens a lot? She on?
She's the one who's sitting there looking, like, just glaring at us as we're all on our phone.
Okay.
Like when we go out
Good for
to
her.
dinner, it's
Yeah.
it's kind of funny actually.
Yeah. So you have what, 5 or 6 people living there?
Yeah.
So you're seeing the screen use, the regular, like, full-time screen use of 5 or 6 people, and so what? And I'm not asking you to. I mean, of course, some people who are listening know who you live with and so on. So let's not get specific. But
this person.
what is your feel for yourself and these people? I'm going to ask you 2 questions. What is the feel for the direction that's all going in terms of? Are people getting better about it? Are people becoming more aware of it? We do have these apps now that are telling us how much time we're spending, or is it getting worse? And what do you see as the long-term problems that are going to be associated with it, and what do you see as the solutions biblically for it?
The younger of us in the house, definitely I see more dependent on screens, more likely to be just sitting around flipping through Instagram or Facebook or whatever for no particular reason. And I think I noticed that I waste a decent amount of time with it. I kind of wonder where, like my wife and I, where would we be further along in maybe in our relationship? Like how much of our relationship has been put on hold because we have instead, we'll both be sitting in the same room and I'll be on my phone and she'll be on her phone and we won't actually be talking about our days or whatever. I wonder how much it's like stunted our relationships and stunted our professional lives and stunted our maturity, in general. And yeah, I don't want to get totally like, I think that's a big problem that a lot of people do is, oh, this is partially bad, so it's all bad. I don't want to do that, but I do wonder how much it has hindered us as a family. Both in regards to. I
guess it depends on who she's texting.
Right. That's a whole different issue.
Right.
But I don't necessarily. I don't want to completely dog it, but I do think that when there's not boundaries set up for when we put the phones away or when or how much we're on the phones, I think that can be a hindrance. I noticed like a lot of times when I'm going to eat something, I will turn on. I actually don't really watch TV. I just watch Netflix or whatever, and so I pull it up on my iPad or something like that. And I'll be sitting in front of a TV with an iPad sitting on the table in front of me watching the iPad.
Been there.
But I've noticed that I will turn on a show, I'll eat my food, and once I'm done eating, like I turn off the show because I think it's really what it is I need to be doing something with my hands at the same time as I'm watching something. And so, maybe that's a good thing, I guess. Or at least I think it just goes even further to show how much I need sensory input at all times.
Yeah, you may just have a attention deficit problem.
That might be what that is.
It's a different issue probably than what we're talking about here. We can deal with that in counseling later.
All right.
But no, I mean, the question that I really want to get to is, what does it look like for a Christ follower to be serious about, making sure that this kind of technology isn't becoming an idol or isn't taking over or isn't stealing from us, like you said, or is your relationship not what it should be because of it? When I think about, okay, how often are you, at your age, I would think that, you don't have kids yet. You have other friends who are your age and so on. I would be thinking that, 3 or 4 nights a week, you would be connecting with other people, whatever. And I wonder if that's the case or no. I'm guessing it's not. You sent me that picture of our young adults group with that first meeting that you all had. And you sent me a picture where everybody was on their phone. Now, I know it was, you guys
were setting something up.
There was something to that. But it wouldn't have been shocking if it hadn't been that way, right? Like everybody is connected.
It might have looked pretty similar to that right before the meeting started.
Yeah. The idea that you're in the room with other people and that they are no longer, I mean, think about this. Other people are no longer interesting enough to us to put down Facebook, which is just other people putting their stuff out that's not even probably, what we're locked into it more as an addiction than anything else. We're sitting here scrolling through Facebook, which is the people who we care less about, or I don't say care less about, but who we have less relationship with, right? Putting
right.
random things about their life, while the most important people in our life are literally sitting across the dinner table or on the couch next to us or whatever. We're ignoring those people, and each of us are looking at what other people are doing. There's something broken about that, right? And so how does a Christ follower, adjust it? I know for me, I've looked at, okay, I want to put my phone away when I'm meeting with somebody, or it depends on who you're meeting with, right? If you're with your spouse and your phone is there and so on, I don't know. It depends on, but if you're meeting somebody, there's certainly if you're constantly looking at your phone, it suggests you're not important to me. I'm not interested in what you're doing, and so on. So that's one thing that just sends a bad social cue. But the fact that you want to do that by itself says we're losing our interest in other people as an end in themselves. People have become literally a means to an end to entertain us. So I would rather look at Facebook. I'm not saying I actually would. I'm just saying it seems like our behavior would suggest. I'd rather look at Facebook where other people are either putting things on there that they think will be entertaining and see if it's entertaining to me, rather than engage with another person as an end in themselves and just get to know them better and just get to, what did you do today? And what do you think about this? And philosophize. And one of the things that's been happening, and we'll probably talk some about this in messages in the future, but there's this apathy. Rather than, we've spent a lot of time at Acts Church talking about, skeptics' questions and the problem of evil and the problem of good and the ontological argument, whatever these different things are that we go through, right? That are, hey, for those of you who are struggling with agnosticism, atheism, because you have scientific issues or philosophical issues, we're going to walk through those. But the fact is that a lot of people just don't have any issues. They just don't care. And I think one of the reasons that so many people are actually, they're not atheists or not or Christians or anything in between. They're just, I don't care.
Right.
I've got so much that I can just do to distract myself and entertain myself that I'm not even engaging with those questions.
Right.
I'm not even trying to do that. And so instead of, and again, that goes to, where do you normally engage with those questions? In conversations of small groups of people, individual, one-on-one, or 3 or 4 people together. That's where those things get worked out.
Do you listen to 21 Pilots a lot?
I don't.
I did not think so.
No.
But they have a song called Car Radio. It's actually the first song I heard by them, and it's a weird song. I mean,
and are they all pilots?
There's 2 guys.
Okay.
So
that's not 21. So they've got a math issue.
Each of them count for 10.5 people.
Okay.
And then they are not pilots. They are, I don't know what they did before they did music. They're musicians.
Okay. Right.
Anyway, they have a song called Car Radio, and they talk about how when his car radio got stolen out of his car, and now he has all this silence that he's alone with his thoughts now. He says it's terrifying, Right. And I think that's kind of the same thing. If we took a day without our phones,
right,
the things that would come into our mind would terrify us. And so we don't do it.
Or we think they would.
Right. Yeah.
Or we don't think about it. Or we're so used to.
They could be.
I mean, you have a background noise. It's like, sometimes when I go to sleep, I like to have like a show going or whatever. Somebody might use a white noise machine or whale songs or whatever they've got, right? That's like, this is calming. This is what it's in the background so that I can just kind of, let my mind go back to zero so I can go to sleep, whatever the case is. Maybe not zero, but, I can do it. And now we have that in life in general. We're not facing issues because we can just entertain ourselves or really, I don't even know how entertain. The truth is, if you really go through your Facebook feed or whatever, Instagram or whatever, maybe 1 out of 10 or 20 is actually at all interesting to you.
Right.
But you're scrolling through and reading all this stuff. Right?
I think it's just the constant new.
It's something new. Yeah, I agree. There's something about newness. Like whether you go on Netflix or whether you go on whatever, there's something about, Nirvana, you've probably heard of them. That's more my speed.
Now, were they Buddhists?
Yeah, they could be. Of course, Dave Grohl's still doing music as a Foo Fighters, but
he was from Nirvana?
Yeah, he was a
drummer.
I didn't know that. Oh. Yeah. You didn't know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Wow, yeah. Dave Grohl was a drummer for Nirvana, and after Nirvana, as a matter of fact, at least one of the other guys from Foo Fighters was like a touring guitarist, I think, with Nirvana.
Not like a part of the
not
band,
no, not the original band was Kurt Cobain, Chris Novoselic, and Dave Grohl.
Okay.
Actually, there was a different drummer before them. If you have the album Bleach, which you shouldn't because they're it's not uplifting music. But anyway, Nirvana came up with a song early '90s, 1991. And their most famous song is called "Smells Like Teen Spirit." You've probably heard it.
Yeah.
And it's "Here We Are Now, Entertain Us." Right?
I never knew what he was saying there either.
Oh yeah. He said, "Here we are now, entertain us. Here we are now, entertain us. I feel stupid and contagious. Here we are now, entertain us." Right? So the idea is, hey. Almost saying exactly what you're saying. I feel stupid and contagious. I don't like my own thoughts. I don't like the way that I feel. I don't like the way that society makes me feel. And so give me something. Entertain me. It's your job to do that, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's this, I think with the lights out, it's less dangerous. Here we are now, entertain us. And so there's this idea of wanting constant something to distract, to entertain, so I don't have to face the real stuff. Mm-hmm. And so my part of my ministry, and what God has called me to, is to really address people's real concerns and show them who Jesus Christ is and the truth and what's real about that. And one of the things I'm fighting isn't just those who have arguments against. In fact, I would say that's less of what I'm fighting than those who are saying, I'm too busy being entertained. I'm too busy being busy. Mm-hmm. I'm too busy in this screen, or maybe it's not a screen, it's some other idol, right? I'm too busy in my love for NFL football. I'm too busy in my kids' traveling soccer team. I'm too busy in whatever it is to think about or address or connect with the big thing, the actual important thing. So it's like, here I am with my wife or my, your husband or your wife, your spouse, and I'm looking through Facebook instead of talking to you. It's a similar thing. Like, I'm spending my time on all of these, way down the line of priorities, issues to entertain myself and distract myself instead of thinking about the most important things in life, like whether there's such a real thing as love or hope or peace or God. Right. And so I don't want to think about those things, or at least I'm not thinking about those things so that I can think about cute cat videos. I mean, think about if, we know that Satan is real and that he has plans and strategies and so on. What a great, or what an effective strategy it seems to have been to literally just create so much content, quote unquote, that you can not have to think about what's real. Now, which is why one of the reasons I think it's good for us to create the kind of content we're creating right now as we're sitting here, because it is something you can connect to through your device or whatever, and hopefully engage with it in a way that makes you actually think and work through some things. And there is plenty of content out there that does that. Well, most of it doesn't.
Well, content media that you intake through screens or through headphones or whatever, in itself is neutral. It's not good or bad. And something that could be good for me, that could just be a good uplifting laugh for me, it could be something that someone else is dependent on to get them through the day so that they don't have to deal with the real issues in their life. And so it's not that this abundance of content in itself is bad. It's that it's being used by ourselves, really, and by Satan to hinder the gospel.
Yeah, I think, let's just say the tools are neutral. Your cell phone by itself is neutral.
Right.
Your television by itself is neutral. What you choose to do with it and how you choose to engage with it is not neutral.
But even like some like TV shows can even be neutral. Like, this show in itself is not good. It is not bad.
Let's take TV shows out for a second, because I actually do want to address that. But let's just say there is content out there that is neutral.
Yes.
A video of a cat jumping because it's afraid of a pickle. I don't know if you've seen this.
Yes. Well, cucumbers.
Cucumbers. There you go. Okay, well, what's the difference?
Are they afraid of pickles?
Well, isn't a pickle a cucumber?
Well, but it's different.
I don't know.
My
daughter's got a cat. I'll check that out when I get home. I won't actually.
Set a pickle on the ground next to it.
I don't know why they're afraid of cucumbers. I don't know what the deal is. But a video of a cat being afraid of cucumber is neutral, right? Uh-huh. There's nothing evil about that. Uh-huh. I mean, other than cats are evil.
Right.
But no, I'm kidding. Cat people love cats. We have a cat at home. It's wonderful. Don't get upset. Don't send me emails.
But what about the cat before it?
Right. Well, so there's cats that are on thing being scared. Okay, it's neutral. If I spend my whole day watching that instead of taking care of my kids or loving my spouse or whatever or reading my Bible, then there's a problem with that thing. It wasn't the content that was bad; it's the way that I engaged with that content that was bad.
Right.
I'll give you that. TV shows. The reason I would not say that is because you are not going to find many TV shows that don't have a philosophy and an agenda that they are putting forth, whether they know it, whether they recognize it, that whether the creators of that content recognize what they're doing or not, they are putting out their ideas. There's very few ideas coming from a cat jumping because of a cucumber.
But the way I intake that content is not necessarily according to the way that they intended it.
That's true.
There's a little
I
bit
just
of
wouldn't call it
subjectivity with
neutral.
That's true. Yeah,
Your reaction to it can be neutral. In other words, you can take it and say, I understand what they're saying. I disagree with this. I agree with that. But then that's really not neutral. You're actually doing some work there.
Right. Okay.
The problem is that people take things in on neutral.
Right.
Which is they're just going and because worldviews
Accepting whatever
and
hits them.
ideas are generally caught like a cold. They're generally not. You're generally not creating your worldview by being really introspective and thinking and learning. You're generally getting your worldview by just catching it, which is why. And I talked on Sunday about
and whatever is the most catchy, like whatever is the most contagious, is what you stick with.
Right. If you go back to the last sermon, which was Rooted #1, which should be on this channel, you'll find that I talk somewhat about that concept, right? Of now I forgot what I was talking about. What you catch
Contagious and worldviews.
Yeah. Okay. Gosh, I'm getting old.
You started thinking about.
I started thinking about something else. Yeah. So. You're going to catch it, right? And the way you know that, one of the ways that you can see that is people who 20 years when I was young, I wasn't that young 20 years ago, but 20 years
Younger than
ago,
me.
yeah, I was. That's true. Good for me.
Good for you.
When 20 years ago, when I was, connecting with other people and they were talking about their political views and their views on social issues and their views on things like this, actually most of them were in, let's call it X, this place, right? This is what they believed about same-sex marriage. This is what they believed about abortion. This is what they believed about guns rights. Just throw out your whatever it is, right? Your political or social issue. And then 20 years later, society has moved on those issues. In some cases, drastically moved.
Right.
But then you go back to the individuals, because that's just society and whatever. You go back to the individuals and you see where do they stand, and they tend to stand exactly where society stands. And I find that to be very interesting, which suggests that they're just catching their worldview.
Right.
They believed what society believed, the normal thing 20 years ago, and now they believe the normal thing now, even though it's a completely different thing.
Right.
They don't have a philosophical explanation for why they do it. They would just repeat back to you the kinds of things that are said in the kinds of shows. It all comes through what you watch on TV and the videos and the things that you read and the whatever. It's snappy little things like, love means love and whatever, which of course love means love. That's a truism, right? It is what it is. Yeah, that's true also.
Tautology.
It's a tautology. It's nothing. It doesn't mean anything to say love is love. Of course, love is love. What else would love be? And yet somebody would say, but you know what I mean. And so, I think I know what you're trying to say. The question is whether what you're trying to say is philosophically valid.
Right.
Is intellectually is actually not just absurd as an intellectual concept, but you don't think about that because everything is catchphrases and we learn so much through story, which is why I don't think shows are neutral. And then we move, and so as we're looking at these phones, so these screens and our TVs and whatever, the fact is that what you need to understand is. One, yes, you can be wasting time. Okay, so the first thing as a Christ follower, you could just be wasting time. And I'm guilty of that, just wasting time on a phone or on an iPad or whatever. The next thing is you can be catching worldview that you don't even realize you're catching because it's just happening. You're just doing it. And the more that you hear something, the more that you're likely to start to ingest it and own it. We talked about being rooted this last week in church and what can get to your roots. We talked about salt water can get on a plant, but a plant, if it gets in the leaves and the stem, the plant can kind of shake it off. It can get rid of it.
Right.
But if it gets to the roots, it's toxic and it can, so the problem is that it's one thing to see, like you said, a show. And if you're not neutral, if you're coming into it in the right way, you're not neutral towards it,
You can shake it off.
You can shake it off because you recognize. Now, I'm not saying watch anything you want because you can just shake it off. There's just things you shouldn't be putting in your mind.
Well, because you're shaking it off and it's getting down into the soil around you anyway.
Yeah, there's things that are not to be engaged with and then shaken off, right? You can, well, I'm watching pornography, I'll just shake it off. No, I'm sorry. There's no value in that.
There's a difference between salt and then just flames.
Right. There you go. And so there's things that you can kind of eat the meat and spit out the bones if you're engaging with it properly. The problem is that people aren't always engaging with it in that way and thinking about it. So it's just getting into the root and you don't realize it. And so then what happens is over time, your worldview, and all I mean by your worldview is the things that you believe, right? The structure for the things that you believe. As you walk through time and you continue to be in your screens and you're watching this, you're doing this, you're reading that. And then 10 years later, you find yourself so similar to what everyone else in culture looks like that it's impossible that you could also be having the mind of Christ towards those things, right? Because we know that Christ is countercultural. We know that wherever the world goes, I'm not saying the world's wrong about every single thing they think. I'm just saying wherever the world goes, generally speaking, we should have a view that is different and oftentimes opposite from where the world is going with things. And so you've just got to be extremely careful. And now that we're spending so much time distracting ourselves from thinking about anything at all. But then even when we are thinking, catching so much garbage and toxic worldviews. We talked about deep fried philosophies, right? You don't want to eat deep fried food too much because you get fat and unhealthy. You don't want to intake deep fried philosophies too much because spiritually you become fat and unhealthy. And so as you're engaging with this and we're thinking about, think about the time, think about the fact that the people in your house would rather have your eye-to-eye, face-to-face contact with them than you looking at your phone. And think about the fact that the more time you spend doing that is the less time you spend reading scripture or connecting with the Lord or reading solid good books or whatever it is, right? And then think about the fact that what's happening there is that you're either one of two things. You're totally turning yourself off from even kind of being a human to where you're just going into this, neutral mode. Or you're taking in, and both can be happening at the same time, you're taking in toxic philosophies and probably not being as careful as you need to be about what's coming in.
Right.
And you may or may not know this, but a lot of the things that are on Facebook that look like real things or that can look like real things are not. In other words, a lot of the articles and whatever, you look down at the bottom to see where it came from, right? They're like, hey, look at this thing that happened. And I look at the bottom and it's like some weird news source, right? That's like clearly not, it's obviously the word fake news and so on, but it's coming from wherever, or it's just a satire site. And people don't know that it's a satire site, or
from The Onion,
right? Or The Onion or Babylon Bee or something like that. You see those kinds of things, and you realize these people don't realize that what they're putting, or there's just these little statements, right? Or quotes that may or may not have come from the person you say they're from.
Or like it's really easy to fake a Twitter screenshot, and so there's lots of those out there, where it looks like this person tweeted that, and it's kind of a meme now. Like you should know that this isn't real,
right? But
people don't.
The problem is that depending on your age and how much you know about that kind of stuff, you might not know,
right?
And then you repost it, to all your friends who also don't know that,
right?
And then they're all like, "I can't believe that Pastor David tweeted that," whatever it is.
Oh, I should do that.
Yeah, good idea. So in any case.
Start a satire, Acts Church satire page.
There you go. That's just what we need. But as believers, as those who are supposed to have the mind of Christ, as Christ followers, I just want to encourage us, all of us, starting with me, to really be more serious about thinking through our screen use and the amount of time that we're spending on this and how it affects other people and how it affects ourselves. And, it's something that I'm recognizing for myself more and more and more needs to be dealt with. And it's not that we need to get rid of this stuff altogether, although that time may come. If we find that just as a people, as a society, as a culture, we just simply can't have super powerful small computers in our pockets and not have them lead us down a bad path.
Yeah.
Then the best thing to do is go back to flip phones, right? Yeah. Without texting.
I think the only way that's going to happen is if somehow technology breaks down. I don't think people in general are going to willingly.
Yeah, but
do that.
The robot overlords aren't going to let us have cell phones.
That's true.
Once they come
eventually,
right? Once the robots take over, I think they're going to take away our cell phones because they don't want us organizing.
Well, they won't take away our cell phones. They'll be our cell phones, and they'll
That's true.
they'll
That's true.
grow legs. And
Yeah. People are like, are they serious right now? Do they believe in that? No, we don't think the robot overlords are coming. But we do think that you should be careful about your screen use as we should be careful about ours. And so let's pray as we end this. Father, I just pray that you would give us wisdom. Give us wisdom about this technology. Technology is coming faster than wisdom is catching up, and we just pray that we would have wisdom. We pray for our children. We pray for young people who have grown up with all of this technology, and this is just a part of how they exist and interact with the world. Lord, we pray that they would look up from those screens and see the beauty of your creation, both in natural beauty and in the people that are around them, their friends, the individuals, the human beings that we should be spending our time connecting to and with and learning about and having that relational side of who we are as human beings grow stronger and help our hearts not to grow cold as we become more connected to machines than we are to human beings. And Lord, we pray that your church would be the place where that is. Where it starts, where we start a revolution against being connected to or tied to these machines and more tied to each other, Lord, and let us show people real love. And for those who feel alienated and for those who feel cast away by their family being more interested in their cell phones than in them, and for those who feel lonely, which I think people are going to feel more and more lonely and isolated, Lord, we just pray that your church, that your body, that through us you would reach out to those people and help them know that we see them, we hear them, we know them, we care about them. And we just pray that you would send those to your church, both at Acts Church and all over the world, who just need the real human touch of relationship and care and compassion. And we ask that we would be able to use the technology that there is for your kingdom. That we're glad that we get to research and know your word better. We're glad that we can put things like this podcast out that hopefully encourage people and draw them closer to you. But we pray that people wouldn't get so tied to things like that they ignore each other. And we thank you, Lord. And we love you. In your name, amen.
Amen. Well, thanks for listening to that podcast. That was episode 30. We are almost a year into our podcasting venture. We've taken a couple breaks throughout the year, but it's good to be continuing this. Give us a comment or a review in iTunes or a like so that we know that you value this. Comment and share ways that you have incorporated phone use into your life in a healthy way. Like we said in the podcast, there's so many good things that these phones can do, that technology in general today can do. For our relationships and our businesses and things like that. But we also need to find ways to keep them in their place and not let them overtake our lives. So let us know how you've done that successfully, or other things that you're thinking about relating to this topic. We'd love to hear more from you. Thanks for listening again, and we will talk to you again later.